I've pre-cut the 320 grit for roughing up the bearing surfaces, and got it in long strips like this to do the crankshaft journal, and short pieces like this to do the inside of the connecting rod bearings and the inside of the two center main bearings. So I'll do a couple here. Use this little piece to do the inside of this. I wiggle my finger back and forth and run all the way around it. It's not a heavy duty thing. And so now we've got it sufficiently scuffed up in here to make sure the bearings roll well on it. And I'm going to use this same piece for the second one, if it hopefully works, but it doesn't, so you use a lot of it. If it's not scuffing well, you don't feel it, the tension on it, then you need to get a new piece. So here I go, making around, going around in a circle and jiggling it in and out to give the surface, the little scratches in it, unevenness so that the bearings will roll on them. So those two are done. Now I'm going to do the inside of the connecting rods, holding it together with my finger, like right here, and pay attention, special attention to the heavy part of the bearing surface, which is right here, and we definitely want it to roll on this surface. I'm going to do a journal, show you how to do that. Now this one, you hold the one pull down and one pull up. That way you're not doing it parallel. And I do it in both directions. And again, the top is the part that wants to get the most attention. That's the top of the bearing. That's where most of the pressure is in this thing. Backside's not quite as important. All right, and now we'll do the bearing surface on the center main. Same deal. You can make it go up and down. This one you want to get all the way around it because it's taking the thrust from many pistons instead of just one. And do this again. So that's the prepping that needs to be done on these. I usually use new bearings. If the thing has any sign of rust, as we discussed earlier. I'm putting the rings on the pistons in preparation for putting them on the crankshaft. And doing that, because I'm not too interested in using this as a fishing motor, I'm putting used rings on the bottom one or two lands. I have two different pistons here. I've got two ring pistons here and three ring pistons here because finding the high crown pistons is difficult. They don't recommend using those because in the general course of events, people fishing, they would not stand up well. The two ringers would get worn skirts on them, that kind of thing, but they're faster. And the higher crown pistons develop more compression, and yeah, they tend to burn, pre-ignite more, but they still, if you have your timing retarded, they stand up better and they should give me more power. I'm looking for speed out of this. So I am using used ones at the bottom two. I put them on with my fingers. No, I don't. Put them on with my fingers, and I line them up as close to the pin as I can get. And then I will put on new rings. A little difficulty with this one, but that's the way it is sometimes. All right. So I've got my single ring on the 2 ringers and 2 rings on the 3 ringers. And I'm going to put on the new ring on top. I am doing this engine for myself, and if I was rebuilding this for a customer, I would put all 3 rings on new, but if I could get them. Yeah, that piston's loaded. This piston's loaded. Okay, we're in the process of rebuilding this 6-cylinder inline 150, and the first thing we're going to do is put on the reed cages. I've inspected them all to make sure all the pedals are there and there's no bent reed stops, like right here, no bent down and no chipped reeds or anything like that. And as we discussed earlier, the labyrinth seals are full and standing inside. That's an idle problem if they wear out, which they do. So I'm going to put that on, but all of these have an up and a down. You want to make sure you put it up because the oiler hole for the labyrinth seal is down slanted, and if you put it on upside down, it won't get the lubrication it needs. So I'm making sure that the up is up when I put it on, and that's going on right here. I'm going to fit it together. I'm Loctiting my nuts, but my recommendation is to put new ones in. They're a little hard to find. Putting the easy one in first so that I can hold it together while I get the back one in. That's a little harder to move. So I'm going to bring it up to bearing, no more. You always want to tighten everything in sequence. Do it a little bit at a time, go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Don't try and tighten everything one side up with the other side loose. You'll ruin something or bend it. So now I'm getting ready to put the other one in, and I'm going to use a very no-no tool in this business. Don't ever use a magnet to pick up any bearings or anything like that, because they'll stick together and slide, and you'll have a failed bearing. In this particular case, I'm using it to hold the nut that goes into a pocket, and it shouldn't be touching anything that would cause it to fail. So I'm pushing it in. Back and forth a couple of times, always good to do it more. All right, there we go. Now I'm going to put a little bit of oil on top, rotate it, get it oiled. All right, so that's the one of the reed cages. Now we'll do a piston. Okay, you want to make sure that you use needle bearing grease, not 2,4-C. Again, it's too good and it'll make the needles slide. So we don't want that. So we're going to put a bead around the journal. Now the next thing we do is take the bearing pieces, the halves that hold the rollers, cages, I should call them, the caged roller bearings. So these are the cages. I'm going to put them on in place. time. I put them in the holes and they stay there because the grease is there. Want to make sure they don't get cocked in there. They can get kind of hung up in the cage. You want to make sure they're square and go in all the way, and that they're vertical and not at an angle. The nice thing about these cages is you can see if you haven't got enough bearings in there because there's an open slot. Well, this looks good all the way around. Yep, we're in there. Next thing is with the piston, there's marks right here and right here. You want to make sure they're aligned. On some of the older engines, they had lines on the side, on the boss right here, etched lines. In fact, I think these do too, actually. But you line up these knobs, and these are matched. You can't interchange these end caps. Okay, and the second thing about this is this deflector. You want to make real sure that the deflector is in the right place, so when it goes down the piston bore, it won't be the wrong way. If they're all the wrong way, you're in trouble. So the always thing was, if you get your fingers, they'll fit in the curve. Typically, that's the way we did it in the old days. So I'm making sure I got this and that lump lined up, and I've got my deflector lined in the right direction. Comes out of the bore. You look down the bore, you'll see it's curved out like that, and my deflector is curved out like that. And if I hold it upright, this is the direction it's in, and if I put my fingers on it like that, I know that's the right way. So here we go. We're going to put that on. All right. Recommended procedure is to use a new nut with new elastic stop on it. They're a little bit hard to find these days. I use Loctite on it, but it's not recommended. But I do know it works because I've done it before. In the old days when we worked on these engines, you do stuff that you'd never do today, because you'd be sued. In the old days, you used parts, you looked at them and evaluated them. Are they usable? Are they going to work okay? Is the guy going to get good service out of it? Great. And every once in a while, you'd miss. Nobody got too upset about it. You took care of the problem, and that was the end of it. Today, it'd be all hell would break loose. So we don't do this anymore. We don't do this kind of work anymore. We replace the whole power head on the new stuff, or the whole lower unit, or whatever. You don't replace parts or rebuild something like a lower unit. It just isn't done, because if it fails, then you'll hear from the lawyer because they lost time out in the water, or somebody got upset. But this is for me, so I'm not worried about that. So there's the piston with the deflector in the right place. Matches the other ones. I have put the 2-ring pistons, high deflector. They made this deflector a little bit shorter, lowered the compression a little bit, made it more durable. But the high-speed rigs, they had the high deflector on them and 2 rings. And I put these 2 on the bottom. I couldn't find any more two ringers. But these are all high deflector, and the 3-ring piston replaced the 2, because these things would get scuffed down the skirt and start making noise, and they wear out fairly quickly. So I put them on the bottom when there's a lot of lubrication, so it probably won't bother. Okay, now the last thing I'm going to do here is put on a center main bearing. Again, we make a line of grease, needle bearing assembly, lubricant, not 2,4-C. I did already replace the bottom bearing, which I do in these things. I used to always, because the bottom bearings would go before anything else. They're a single row. The top bearing is a double row and doesn't seem to have the same problem. When you took them apart, ones with 2,000 and 3,000 hours on them, the bottom bearing would always be pretty loose. And it would wobble and wipe out the seals. There. And we got a ring of grease all the way around to hold the bearings. Now these are individual loose bearings. They do not have a cage. So I usually pick up 2 or 3 with a little bit of grease at the end of my finger. If I'm lucky, I can pick up 3. And I put them in place right here.